All right, everyone. Remember that time you had to explain to everyone the difference between BIM 360 Glue and BIM 360 Docs? And then remember the time that you had to explain to everyone the difference between BIM 360 and ACC or Autodesk Construction Cloud? Well, now we're going to do it again from ACC to Autodesk Forma. I think it's called Autodesk Forma Cloud. We'll get into that. But in this episode, this is episode 130 of BIM After Dark Live. We're going to welcome back a friend of the show, and we're going to get into this news that you may have read about, launched, I think, at AU this year was the first public release of it, which is Autodesk Forma. And so it's the transition from what we know as ACC to what the future of Autodesk Cloud platforms is going to be. So without further ado, let's jump into episode 130 of BIM After Dark Live. All right, everyone. Welcome back. If you guys are here live, this is episode 130 of the BIM After Dark Live podcast or live stream, whatever you want to talk about. If it is your first time here, this is a weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the schedule, live stream where we talk about BIM and Revit and AEC technology and really anything related to it. If you're here live at 9 p.m. Eastern time or 6 p.m. Pacific time, feel free to chat. I will be checking out the chat the whole time. I will be answering questions and feeding them into our conversation. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of questions, comments, or heckling on this one. And so feel free to jump in and do your thing. And of course, if you have not subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube so you get updates and new videos and so on and so forth. And so without further ado, I know we're going to have a lot to talk about, so I'm not going to waste any time bringing in our guest of the hour, which is the one and only Scott Davis from Autodesk. How's it going, Scott?
Very good. Thanks for having me back again.
I was going to say your title, but I forgot what your title is at Autodesk. It's like special. It's a technical. Remind me what your title is at Autodesk.
Well, they changed it a while back. Technical Solutions Executive now. I just like to say technical specialist.
Technical specialist. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So for those of you that
19 years, you think we could get the titles?
You would think, but it's all right. It's pretty common, right, to rename things at Autodesk. That's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to the show, man. I appreciate your willingness to jump on. I know if you guys haven't been following along on the show, Scott has been on 2 or 3 times now. 2?
This is my third time on the show.
And so the last 2 times are both very popular episodes because I think they touched on topics that were very interesting to our colleagues in the industry. One was kind of the introduction of BIM 360 and ACC platform, really. I think it kind of was. It was really when Glue was basically phased out and ACC was coming and everyone was kind of figuring all that out. And then I think the second time around was deep diving into ACC and some of the cloud work sharing and processes there. And now
we talked about what's shared, consumed, and live linking.
Yes. And those are 2 very popular videos, probably because they're questions that people were asking every single day. And so I'm hoping that this one is going to be the same in the sense of over the next year. And honestly, probably since, when was it? October? When was AU? Something like that? Or September?
Yeah, a little
since September, when there was some of those launches and announcements, everyone's been scratching their head thinking, what on earth is happening with this whole Forma thing? So thank you for jumping back on. Appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah,
I also thank you for being brave and being the first person to come on and sort of tackle this one because I'm sure it's not going to be easy.
I put an internal Slack message out on our team, and I got a few good luck. Good for you.
All right. And before we jumped on, as I was saying, I think you and your colleagues are going to spend a lot of time over the next year just trying to roll this thing out and help everyone sort of understand it. So I'm happy that you're here because I have plenty of questions. I know plenty of people do here, and I know it's very early, and so I think this is an opportunity to sort of lay the groundwork for what this thing is going to look like. So before we actually jump into deep into Forma and what Forma means, because another piece of that is the confusion of Forma site design being, and then how this, well, we'll get into that. Maybe give everyone who hasn't seen or heard of you here on the show a little background on yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. So I mentioned earlier, I'm working towards my 19th year at Autodesk. I started March 2007, so I'm coming up on it this next March. I was an architect by background. I'll often like to say I'm a recovering architect now, or I have been for quite some time. Um, Got a degree in architecture from Cal Poly Pomona. I was a CAD guru early in my career in AutoCAD. In fact, I started at VersaCAD. So if anybody remembers VersaCAD, throw a thumbs up in the chat, and you're going to date yourself a little bit. So VersaCAD in 1988, AutoCAD in 1989, AutoCAD version 9 on monochrome green screens on 286 computers. So things have definitely come a long ways since then. Worked in architecture for about 12 years prior to joining Autodesk. And what really led me to joining Autodesk was I was a day one Revit user. I was fortunate enough to learn from a good friend of mine, Jim Balding, who I saw in the chat earlier, so he was on the call.
Yep, Jim's here.
Introduced me to this thing that he couldn't even talk about at that point. He spelled it revit.com. Go to that website and read it. And was able to download it the very first day it became available. And as I say, the rest is history. Here we are.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining. You've always been willing to take the front end. You're kind of the first infantry when it comes to these discussions. So I'm always appreciative to that. And like I said, you've been a friend of the show, and I know you and I have always connected at conferences over the years. So appreciate you coming on. Honestly, I was thinking about where to even start, and so I guess maybe try to sort of boil it down as the executive summary before we jump in. To what the announcement was, if people haven't heard it at AU, and then there's been a couple more press releases, I think, or something since then, of Autodesk Forma, and what this shift means and
Sure.
to all of us.
We can. I'll talk about it first, and I do have a few slides that we can present to you here in a little bit. But I think the first thing to do to kick it off is we've at Autodesk talked about this idea of Forma being an industry platform for quite some time. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 AUs ago. Somebody out there will remember and throw it in the chat. They're all a blur to me at some point. But we talked about this idea of Forma, Flow, and Fusion. All right. So 3 separate industry clouds. Many of you guys know this, some don't, but Autodesk does more than just AECO. We have a media and entertainment group as well that does things around, Hollywood film production and special effects and gaming and those things. And we also have a manufacturing group that produces tools like Inventor and Fusion. And so several years ago, we introduced this idea that there was going to be these 3 industry clouds, Form, Flow, and Fusion, that all ran on Forge. I guess we were dropping the F-bombs on everybody. It was F everything.
Right.
And so I think what we did this year at AU was finally brought that all together and said, yes, we are now ready to move forward with this idea that we've been talking about for several years about an industry cloud or several industry clouds that are really all tied together through a common platform, through now what is called Autodesk Platform Services behind the scenes.
So I guess trying to break it down into something more tangible or visual, let's say.
Sure.
So what this is so was ACC, as we know it, was kind of a bridge to this point anyways. Was that kind of the idea? Because ACC is also built on the Forge platform, am I right?
It is. ACC is built on the Forge platform as well. Obviously, it had a different name. And so I think that's one maybe a myth to clear up right now. And I think I have it in a slide later. But this isn't the days of when we had BIM 360, then acquired PlanGrid and needed to be able to integrate PlanGrid in and produced another product called the Autodesk Construction Cloud, or ACC. And we had 2 parallel products. And it was, do I start my projects over there, or do I start them over here? Do I put them in ACC? This is not that. This is the ACC platform, the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform, as you know it today, getting a rebrand into Forma as being the Forma Industry Cloud.
Got it. So as we know, for those of us that are very familiar with ACC, we're not changing platforms technically from ACC to Forma. There's going to be some changes, but in theory, it's still a similar environment that we're used to.
Correct. You'll be in the same environments. I don't know 100% yet. Some of this stuff is gone somewhat live behind the scene after AU, but The majority of it is really yet to come. We won't probably see much of this stuff until the new product line starts to roll out, early next year. As history repeats itself, we typically release our desktop named products around March or April or across that timeline. So I think the thought is that most of this will start to happen, or you'll start to see some of these name changes come when products roll out over the course of kind of early next calendar year.
Got it. All right. So why don't we jump into a few of these slides? Because I think
Sure.
I think as I'm thinking of questions that I'm going to ask anyways, I think there might be some that are answered here. So maybe we'll go through this, and then that'll feed sort of what's happening next. So feel free to jump in. They see your screen.
All right,
whenever you're ready.
I'm going to have to do this to you guys. I'm going to have to throw the one screen in because I am talking about forward-looking statements here. I just mentioned that we are.
I don't know how safe harbor statements work on YouTube. I got to be honest, but you got to do it. I get it.
Yeah. So everything I'm talking about here today on at BIM After Dark are forward-looking statements. I cannot promise any dates of these things. That's why I said we hope that things will be out when products roll out next year, but don't make any purchasing decisions thinking that these things are guaranteed to happen at any time next year. We are looking at the future of products and really the future of what we think AEC is going, right? ECO, I guess I should say. To get into the next slide, I kind of talked about this, but it's better maybe to see the visual of it, which is really on the left side over here, kind of looking at the progression of where we've been. I started off introducing myself, a VersaCAD, AutoCAD user, then obviously a BIM user. Jim and I, when we started in Revit, there was no BIM. We didn't call it BIM. It was just Revit. It was just another tool, and it became that. And then Autodesk kind of coined this other term, which is connected BIM, which really came around with the cloud, Revit cloud work sharing. Talk about name changes. The product that was called Skyscraper, BIM 360 Teams,
right?
BIM 360, Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro. Obviously we changed that name many times over the years.
Many times.
Yeah. And now to where we are today, which is Forma. And Forma is this idea of outcome-based industry cloud that is also then related, as I mentioned, to our two other industry clouds, Fusion on the manufacturing side of things and Flow on the media and entertainment side of things, that all sit on top of Autodesk Platform Services with a data repository, that common data environment. As you know it today, it's called Autodesk Docs. What it will be called is Forma Data Management. So there's our first kind of official name change of a product, not just a platform, but Forma Data Management will be what you know as Autodesk Docs, is that common repository that when you start a project and you have information, it can be files, it can be Revit files, it can be CAD, it can be SketchUp, it can be Excel spreadsheets, it can be Tekla models, IFC, but really anything that is part of that common data environment that then can be used across this platform. In our case, mostly on the AEC side, but that doesn't mean that we can't also borrow from our manufacturing friends or our M&E friends to do, cool animations or commercials about our projects, or actually producing parts of buildings, whatever it might happen to be. You want to design a really awesome light fixture and you need to manufacture it. That can be done in Fusion, but all of those things are going to be all much better connected together than they are today, where, in today's environment, if I need something from, I don't know, Rhino, we have some tools, Rhino inside and some other things, but almost always it's like, hey, can you just send me an SAT file? So you have to have your Rhino file and you have to export out to SAT, and then I can bring that into Revit. We're looking at a time here very, very soon where we're going to eliminate file import and export. We're going to be data driven and not file driven, right? So the idea that stuff ends up in a common data environment, in ours at Forma Data Management, and we'll take care of the conversion behind the scenes into this data-rich format that can be used by any number of applications and really be independent of the application from where it came from.
Got it. So other than the rename of Autodesk Docs, does that mean that the platform itself is changing a little bit? I mean, it may look similar as far as a file depository, but is there a significant change on what's happening on the back end of Docs?
I haven't seen anything significant to this point of how much things might change there. I think there may be a little change in just overall UI because things will get named. I've talked about this a little bit with some customers, and there was a concern that if the URLs change, right? So for those that are using ACC today, you might have it bookmarked, or you might start typing acc.autodesk.com, right? In the future, is at forma.autodesk.com. Probably. So what about anything that you might have hard-coded hyperlinked to acc.autodesk.com today? I think that our developers have the sense that those things need to be consistent. They need to automatically redirect to the new names. So I think there'll be some subtle changes. I think the pull downs might have some subtle naming, but for the most part, it'll be what you guys are used to today.
So then when we focus on this idea of a I don't want to say agnostic, but a common data environment, is the end goal right now, you said sort of in the native application. So ideally, it would be opening these file types or linking them or using them in like Revit, for example, right? So as opposed to figuring out, what format would make sense to bring in when you're using SketchUp or Rhino or Maya or something like that, Blender, you name it, right? Ideally, you're using your source file, you're saving it, or whether it's cloud saved, whatever you're doing to Docs, which is now going to be Forma. What is it called again? Forma what?
Data management.
Forma data management.
Forma DM. Forma data. I can't even
Got
say
it.
it.
FDM.
Forma data management.
FDM. I like that. So saving it to FDM, and then in Revit now, I don't have to worry about what format that's in. In theory, I'll be able to link it in somehow or view it in Revit while I'm working. That's kind of the concept, right? And so, and using this cloud platform to take care of any of that conversion, so to speak, of data or geometry to make it happen.
You got it. I think you summarized it very, very well there. That's the way I understand it today too.
Okay, interesting. Super interesting.
The
Okay.
other side of it is, if I go on to maybe one more slide here, is this idea that it's an idea for life cycle. So if we start up here at the very top of this there's lots of ring type diagrams.
Lots of cycles and
our world, yeah.
It's round.
But if you look at life cycle, we've talked for years about this being all stages of design and construction and handover, right? And I think we've proven a lot of that now. We've got some great early stage design tools. I saw somebody in the chat earlier say, "What is Forma?" That's going to lead to a little bit of the confusion. If
a little bit.
we currently have a tool that's called Forma.
Right.
It does early stage site preparation, right? It's a cloud-based tool, a browser-based tool that allows you to go out, type in an address for your project anywhere on the face of the earth. Then it gives you resources to freely available data like OpenStreetMap and OpenBuildings.com. And then even to some other resources like Esri data, so like GIS data. We can get into that here a little bit later. But it can start compiling all of those things together. And then on that site, let me start playing with some form, right? So there's some sketching tools. So for those that may have been used to our tool that we called Formit, I'm not on the naming, very tough sometimes. Formit and Forma, but we had a 3D sketching tool called Formit that I don't know, Jeff, you guys use SketchUp. Like, it compared with SketchUp to many parts. I mean, SketchUp had some really great things that it did that we didn't do, and then vice versa inside of Formit, right? But we do have some sketching tools in Forma to do some kind of massing studies. You could do some floor plan layout. And then on top of that, you can start doing some analytics directly in the cloud. So I want to do a right to light study. I want to do a solar study. I want to do a wind analysis we're doing at campus. And what are prevailing winds doing at the ground plane in the pedestrian spaces? So we could do all that kind of analysis there, and then we could take that Forma model and from Forma say send to Revit, and in Revit I got the model in context that I could actually start to use, and it wasn't just dumb objects. In Revit, the surfaces knew that they were wall and floor and ceiling, right? They were Revit objects. They got converted for you automatically. Well, I think through the slides here tonight, and depending on how long we can talk, like, you're going to see a lot more of that coming to a lot more powerful features of like Revit recognizing window and door and opening and balcony and other things as they move back and forth a bidirectional environment from Forma to Revit and other tools.
So before you jump in, just because I'm curious, I'm sure people are thinking of it too in the chat, is Forma Site Design going to be renamed, or is it staying Forma Site Design?
So Forma, as we knew it today, was the site design tool, just simply called Forma. It will be known as Forma Site Design, right? And that was one of the big announcements we made at Autodesk University. If you watch the main stage presentation with our CEO Andrew and Robin and others on stage, as they demonstrated the new Forma building design tool, which they explained was, I think they explained it as an LOD 200 kind of design tool in the cloud that could then also move back and forth seamlessly between a browser and Revit on the desktop.
So do we imagine, or is the concept going to be Forma site design, Forma building design, or cloud-based applications that will be part of this platform?
Sure.
That's kind of the thought. So whereas currently ACC, I think the use and what's there, it's not an authoring tool of any type, really, right? I mean, I guess if you consider making submittals and forms and stuff an authoring tool, I mean, it's part of the data, right? But as far as like geometric authoring, right? You're not even modifying, really, right? You're viewing, you're collaborating, and it's a depository, and then but you're not physically creating geometry, and so in theory, with this platform the way it is, you could be in that environment and just say, start designing in Forma data management or DM, FDM.
Yeah, FDM. Let's start making acronyms.
That's right. That's what we do.
We all just trademark them because we're gonna be. So I think the other you kind of mentioned it. So there's this idea of flipping through some slides here. Let me try to get to. We were talking about outcomes. We'll skip through that one for now, but this is the kind of the vision of the whole thing, right? So let me see as it skips forward here. Number one, so expanding Forma data management as that common data environment. So Docs, we've advertised Autodesk Docs as a CDE, a common data environment for years. That's going to be now known as FDM, Forma data management. Second part of this is bringing ACC into Forma, or really just rebranding the Autodesk Construction Cloud, which I think also provided some I don't know, heartache. There was a little bit of something like, okay, so if I went to go sell the Autodesk Construction Cloud to an A&E group, they're like, no, that's for construction.
Right.
In the old BIM 360 days, if I went to go sell BIM 360, they go, we don't do that.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of a branding issue even there with the Autodesk Construction Cloud. It always bothered me. I always just kind of called it the Autodesk Cloud. So now we're kind of getting rid of that. So Forma will be the base case for all of this stuff. And then I mentioned already this idea that Forma is this container that will help to bridge desktop and cloud. One of the first Forma connected clients is Revit, right? So I already mentioned this idea that Revit and Forma are bidirectional, that they can go back and forth between the two. You can start in Forma, you can do Forma site design, and you can get a rough idea of size and scope, get some areas, get some FAR ratios out of it, of your project. Start doing some early stage analysis. Does this design make sense over option A, B, C, or D? You have the ability in Forma to do options. Then you could take that over to Revit, and I could start designing some additional things in Revit, send it back to Forma, and do some additional analytics. But then maybe I want to jump into Forma building design. Now I want to take those basic massing shapes, and I want to start applying some window to wall ratio to those things, right? So how is that going to change my overall building performance? And so by rule, some of the rules you can apply in the building design tool is that window to wall ratio, and it automatically through an AI, this is the first time we mentioned AI in any of this, which is funny too. We thought AI might come out in the very beginning, but the AI will help figure out what's the best pattern for like kind of window and things like that in the building. When I hit send to Revit, guess what? All those windows are Revit objects. And maybe you don't want the 3040 window. So now the Revit objects, you just switch them out with the more appropriate window style that you're using. And then again, send that back into Forma again to do some further analytics on it. What did that change in window to wall ratio do to our overall daylighting study that we were running?
Okay. And
Make sense?
Yeah. And so so it's kind of the concept, I guess what it's doing is it's kind of tweaking the idea of a link, right? And what that really means, so to speak, in the sense of like, for the longest time, right, the link was a static file that you just imported and viewed, etc., right? And so it's becoming more like, I guess, a live link or something, but almost to multiple software type of deal. So you're getting more of that you're utilizing this platform, this cloud platform, to take advantage of the ability to have live links, right? But you can do it cross-platform, right? That's kind of the way I'm seeing it, right? A little bit. It's giving you that functionality. And so I guess, does that mean, and again, this is obviously, you probably can't answer this fully, but does that mean that there's going to be tweaks to the desktop applications moving forward to accept this more common data environment? Is that's part of the rollout of this? It's kind of the rebranding of ACC, and then there's going to be tweaks under the hood to Revit and CAD and Civil 3D and whatever it is to make it so that it's more seamless to actually use these tools, or use this platform, I should say.
You just mentioned something I wanted to bring up, and you just said it, Civil 3D, right? So there's not a great, we do have workflows today to work between Civil 3D and Revit, but not the greatest.
Not the greatest, no.
I think what this is going to really start to unlock, so I talked about in industry, connected client. So Revit will be the first Forma connected client, right? AutoCAD and Civil 3D are probably next in line behind that to be these connected clients. So could I do something in AutoCAD? I know that AutoCAD kind of, like a lot of us have a big no-no. I don't really want to bring AutoCAD files, DWG, into my Revit project. But what if they weren't DWG? What if you did something in AutoCAD and it got saved into your Forma data management, your FDM, converted it to this granular data, and then it could just appear in Revit without adding any weight or any inefficiencies to your model, and it came from CAD. And in Revit, you're like, you don't even know it. Now take that a step further. Now you're working, obviously, we probably all the architects on the call are all working with a civil engineer. What if we could do the same with civil? And maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I can see definite advancements towards shared coordinate systems, right? So what if Civil and Revit basically all pulled from the same environment and got rid of the whole idea of a coordinate system, or being able to understand where does this building exist on the face of the earth? I think there's some really, really exciting things going on there with these connected clients.
No, I think that's helping me paint the picture a little bit, in the sense of like, it's almost like, it's almost like we have to change the term link to some extent. Because what you're doing, I immediately went to like the concept when you said civil and CAD files, like, the one thing I'm sure everyone out there can attest to, if you've worked with anyone using CAD to any extent in 3 dimensions, is proxy graphics and the different plugins that CAD uses to generate them, and how you can't view them in Revit, and maybe you can view them, but the way I see it is, a lot of those proxy graphics, or those certain things, that elements you can't see, you can currently view in ACC when you open that file. You may not, but then you link them into Revit and you can't see them. And so, the way I'm sort of picturing this, which, again, I don't know the back end side of all of this, because it sounds like a hell of a lift to do this for pretty much every authoring tool out there, and non-Autodesk authoring tools too, is similar to the tools like Tracer, or I'm trying to think. There's another one where it kind of rebuilds the geometry. IFCs kind of do that too, where there's a geometry data piece of it, right? And then that geometry data can rebuild it in like Power BI or something, right? And that's how you see the 3D data. And that's actually pretty cool. And the fact that if you can link that into Revit or your authoring tool, and it's basically I guess it's almost like a hologram to some extent, right? As long as you can snap to it, please make sure we can snap to it.
Oh yeah, you have to be able to snap to it. You have to be able to use
but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
it's
almost like a hologram of it, where you can use it for reference. You have the control of a link, but it's not. It's basically just a real time view of that data. I think that's helping me understand. Hopefully, it's helping you guys out there understand it a little bit. Let me know if you guys have questions. I'm checking here too. But
you mentioned. Jeff, you mentioned IFC earlier. So IFC is not so much used in North America. It's really heavily used in European and Asia Pacific region for data exchange, right? Because it's industry foundation classes.
Yes.
It's finding a schema, and it's saying if you use Revit or Archicad or Bentley or whatever else, when I write out to an IFC file, make a window have these properties to it. This data structure for both geometry and metadata, right? In our world, we could effectively maybe I won't say maybe. I don't think it will happen right away, but eventually I think like we won't need IFC because you could be working with a structural engineer that's working in Tekla.
Hmm.
There's already a Tekla plugin that's part of the data exchange program that we have with Autodesk
Hmm.
that can take data from Tekla, convert it using what we're calling the AEC data model. So Autodesk is helping develop this new standard of how we classify all of the stuff that we put into projects.
Hmm.
So maybe I'm working in Tekla. So I just invite that structural engineer into my Forma project. They save that Tekla project to my project location, or even better, more new technology, use Bridge.
Hmm.
They work in their environment, you guys work in your own environment. We just bridge that data back and forth between the different hubs or accounts, whatever
Hmm.
terminology you guys are using for those. And
Right.
you don't have to export it to an IFC.
Hmm.
Just have your Tekla engineer just work away and hit save. And in Revit, I've got the latest and greatest, and they never have to export out to an IFC file to quote unquote send it over to me to give me the latest data.
So what you're telling me is that instead of finally accepting IFCs instead of just Autodesk IFCs, Autodesk just decided we weren't going to do that. We're just going to make our own IFC completely.
I guess. I mean, when
They just couldn't do it. They couldn't. They just couldn't do it. Right? They couldn't accept. The industry. They had to. They had to have the Autodesk IFC.
It probably has a lot because we actually work. There's a whole entire group inside of Autodesk that works with the IFC team. So there's probably a lot of overlap there between what is defined as an industry foundation class and what we're doing with the ACC.
Yeah, I'm only making that joke because anyone who's used model coordination in ACC, if you just bring in an IFC, you can view it, but you can't clash it. But if you create an Autodesk IFC, then you can use it and clash it, no problem.
You'd be making an Autodesk data model. Really.
Yeah, understood.
Tom in the chat said, "Would you be in Revit? Would you be linking Forma?" And I don't think even linking might not be the right terminology anymore. I think you just be loading, right? There's a very subtle
loading,
difference between linking and loading, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like if I think about the visualization environments and some of the ways like a Twinmotion or a D5 or some of these tools handle the direct link. I mean, they still call it a link, but it's kind of similar too, where it's kind of like it's like a connection to the model, so to speak, and then and then from there it can be lighter on this end or heavier on this end, and there's the ability to tweak it. So yeah, I guess I think that's the next thing you guys got to rename is you got to figure out what to call these instead of links.
I don't know. Loading, I don't know what to call. I saw you flashed up there, had it shared a moment ago. Go back to that.
Yep.
So this Forma ecosystem. So obviously we've talked a lot about kind of Autodesk products. I did mention Rhino, I did mention IFC, I did mention Tekla. There's an ecosystem out there, and this is rapidly growing. So you see on that list, TestFit is already there. So TestFit already has a plugin with the Forma site design tools, as we know today, to take TestFit's parking module and do parking in TestFit and have that seamlessly come in to Forma. I would love to see more TestFit, more Hypar, more. Who are all the different players out there? Motif, obviously, we've got a bunch of different players out there that are doing stuff in the space. I would love to see them come in. You see, like a big one, Rhino. So many people in architecture are using Rhino. In fact, Jeff, I don't know about you. Are you hearing Rhino even more than SketchUp now? I seem to be hearing Rhino a lot more than the kind of
yeah. It sounds like the ones who still don't want to do conceptual and Revit are either Rhino or SketchUp. Yeah, but definitely seeing a lot of Rhino for sure.
So what if you could work in Rhino? Just in Rhino, just hit save. And when you hit save, and you give it a location, and it saves to a Forma data management project, right? Saves your project in the cloud, in the Autodesk Cloud. And then we take that Rhino data, apply this schema to it, and convert it into objects that Revit can read. Not only read, but have like visibility control over, snap to, dimension to, tag, because there's metadata behind some of this stuff.
Right.
And then as the Rhino model is being iterated, all the end user has to do is hit save. And when I open my Revit model, the data is loaded, maybe not linked, maybe just loaded in, and the Rhino model shows where I need it to. It's in the proper location. It's got the proper colors for rendering and those kind of things behind it. I think there's a lot of really, really exciting things going on here with this concept of Forma being this industry cloud and bringing all of this stuff together. You see some other big names there too. I know a lot of you guys use Veris for renderings and visualization. I mentioned Esri earlier today, this Esri integration. Like there's freely available stuff for your site, like OpenStreetMap and Open Buildings and some other stuff, and USGS for topography. Esri is the premier database for global information systems, right? Anything out there available. I need zoning for my project. I need to know, for a project I'm doing a school, so I want to overlay the school zone boundaries on my project. I want to show where the bus routes are. There's so much data out there that we could start bringing in through a partnership like we have with Esri, in that sense. So lots of really, really cool stuff, and this is going to continue to grow.
So right now you're saying that these tools are working on the integration with this common data environment. Is that what it is? They have some form of being able to connect their tool to the data environment, and then
Absolutely.
Understood.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Like this one, like Finch, you guys might have heard of Finch. This has actually been LinkedIn a lot. This group from Finch is doing some really cool stuff. So start off in the site design tools and Forma site design, and you have massing. You can do floor plan layout in that tool, but Finch has like a generator that says you give it a program. I'm doing multi-unit housing, right? And I need maximum number of type A, B, and C unit types. And Finch will take the blocks that you define and make the most efficient layout of those systems for you. And then you can send a Revit and walls are in place already, right? There's some really, really cool workflows going on there. So
I assume is the reverse the same too. So if we save a Revit file to the common data environment, then in Rhino, for example, they can do that same link connection, whatever we want to call it, into the environment and see the Revit model. So is that the reverse is ideally what we're talking about too? So like, I mean, I guess it depends on the tool, right? I mean, I guess you're not gonna, depending on the tool, you're not bringing a Revit file into it per se. But I mean, in general, I guess when we just think about the general model tools, like you mentioned, Tekla or Rhino, in theory, right? If they're doing that, then what you're saying is that on the Autodesk side, also the Revit will go up to the environment and they'll be able to connect to Revit on their end.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been talking a lot about bringing things into Revit, but you're totally right. Like the idea that once it's in this common data environment and it is using this AEC data model, that Revit model can go into Tekla, can go into Archicad, can go into Bentley, can come into SketchUp, maybe as a background even. Like once it's in this data model, it can be consumed downstream by really any number of applications that has the API in place in order to pull these things back in, right? Which is really almost every application that's out there.
Awesome. Real quick, we're going to take a quick break, and I definitely want to jump back in. I've got some questions. There's some questions coming on the chat. We're going to hear. We're going to take a quick break and hear from a member of the BIM After Dark community, and then we'll jump right back into this.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Chris Broda, and I'm a member of the BIM After Dark community.
Oh, that's it. That's all we need. That's more than enough to sniff out.
So I knew early on that CAD was going to be the way to go.
Yep.
Then I did Revit, and I was, alone at sea in Revit world, as a single practitioner, and I became a big fan of your videos and it's so changed the way I even look at everything about how to practice. It made me want to join your community for sure.
Yep.
So I thought, this guy's great, I got to join. And I was expecting to learn a lot about Revit, sort of patch the holes of where I was. But instead, I feel like I've learned about my career and I've learned about what it means to be an architect. And I have to say kudos to you and the community, because it has made me a better architect. I have improved my practice. I've improved everything. And it's so funny because I'm ready to retire. So like for the last couple of years, I didn't really want to be an architect anymore. But also, just everything with your community has given me that spark back.
All right. So thanks, Chris. That's Chris Broda. She's been a member of the BIM After Dark community since 2020, actually. So she's been a member since the very beginning. She's one of the first members there. And so if you didn't see from the ad, if you're interested in joining the community and joining office hours online or full courses online, office hours with me and other community members, a news feed and a social feed where you can ask questions without all of the clutter that you see on X and Blue Sky and all these lovely social media things that we've got going on, as well as templates and sample files, then head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. Okay, Scott, we're back. There was a couple questions in the chat. I think the one that's worth answering is sort of, I think this is kind of a broader question, is dimensions being maintained and dimensioning to link. So I think the idea is similar to what I said, like snapping to. So I think when I initially think of a connection, I think I probably go to like the introduction of coordination models initially in Revit. Remember, you were able to bring in the NWDs or whatever, and they were just like this static thing that wasn't cutting, and you couldn't snap to it. And it was like, it was good to have, but it was kind of useless for a lot of other stuff.
Always shaded mode.
Yeah. So it was cool to have, but you couldn't really do anything with it. Similar to even some of the imports, right? OBJs and SATs and all these for a long time weren't cuttable, and they had weird visibility things. I think, along the lines, I'm assuming, and you can sort of correct me here, is that the concept here would be that in whatever tool you're using, the geometry would be similar to a link, let's say in Revit. You would have at least that much control.
I think so. And like when it comes down to dimensioning, obviously in Revit, dimensions are tying to an object. They need to have a reference.
Yeah.
And in the past, if it was in a linked model in the background, it was referencing that object's ID. So let's imagine I'm an architect and I'm working with a structural engineer. The structural engineer deletes a column and replaces it with a column that's a bigger size, and I add a dimension to that column. Well, now I've lost that reference because it's not the actual same object ID any longer. Mm-hmm. This might be a stretch because this is still relatively new. In this new kind of data model world, I think that object could just retain its same data behind the scenes, and like dimensions could maintain their associativity between these linked objects in the background. I'm very hopeful. I don't know if you guys, how many people again saw the Autodesk University keynote, or it might have been in the AECO industry keynote. But one thing that we talked about was using AI to do monotonous tasks like dimensioning drawings. So one example they showed on the stage was through a large language model like ChatGPT saying, add this floor plan to a sheet, call the sheet A201, give it a title, put the floor plan in the middle of the sheet, and dimension the entire thing and tag all the doors and windows and make them readable. That was like your prompt, right?
Right.
And in seconds, all of that was done. Your view template was applied, the entire project was dimensioned. Things that would normally have taken, an intern, or if you want to call them a drafter, whatever, like somebody that was just, doing the monotonous work of dimensioning things, that was done in seconds rather than somebody taking hours or longer to do those kind of things. So I love the idea that dimensions could remain associative, and they could also still be applied by AI behind the scenes. So again, we're not having to maybe dimension drawings anymore. They're just, or maybe it's the idea that AI isn't meant to get us kind of like today. There's no expectation AI is going to get us 100% of the way there. It's still at 80, 90, I don't know what kind of range are you hearing, Jeff, but like AI gets us a good chunk of the way there. We can't trust it entirely. You still have to check your work. So maybe it does most of your dimensions, and then you have to go in and tweak it here and there. I'm hopeful, though.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there about the GUID, I think is a point, or the just ID, element ID, whatever we want to call it, right? I think being someone who's worked, who works a lot with Power BI and visualizing data from models, especially, there's definitely an issue, when it comes to the export of files, like you said, creating an IFC from Tekla and then bringing that in and then connecting that. And a lot of times what happens is it's hard to find what that element ID is, and it's not consistent maybe across the platforms, right? It says one thing here, but then, when it gets exported or moved here, it gets converted to something else. Or with IFCs, the way they contain the geometry within the element is unique. And so, I think if we're getting to the point, like you're saying, where essentially doesn't matter what tool it is, they're all living in the same database, let's say, and those GUIDs, FDM, and these GUIDs are all unique but consistent. Then that's a huge winner, regardless of the tool, right? And I think I know it's not maybe on the design side, it's not as it doesn't seem like as big of a deal because maybe you're typically working with Revit files only. Maybe Civil's the outlier, but definitely on the construction side, it's a big deal. There's so many between Revit and CAD MEP and Civil 3D and Tekla and there's some Rhino happening, or there's some Rhino happening here and there. And you go down the list, and then there's like Auto Sprink and all these like proprietary, fabrication level tools that contractors are using. Getting to that point where you're not manually trying to figure out how to create a common data environment I can see massive potential for that. I'm crossing my fingers that we get to where we're talking about. It sounds like that's the vision, right, of what we're talking about. But one of the questions I had sort of as we jumped into the break is I'm seeing the vision, I'm seeing the strategic approach. I get it. I'm curious sort of on the back end as a technical user of these tools. Are we still going to be working with a similar setup to what we're doing now, which is ACC, so whether it's called Forma or ACC, it's the cloud platform. We have a desktop connector that's doing all the connecting and keeping that up to date, and that's still kind of the workflow and environment, or is there plans on modifying that a little bit, or what's the future state of the current kind of process workflow? I mean, is that part of this discussion?
It's a great question, and you know what? A little bit. So I mentioned the idea of being database structured and more file less in the future. I'll say more because I don't, it's maybe going to take some time for us to kind of eliminate the idea of files. Desktop connector serves a need because we're still in this file-based role. I need to get this thing from point A, this file from point A to point B. So I need desktop connector in order to move that over for me. I think at some point we'll still maybe have a tool like that connects Forma data management with other applications like Excel. Like Excel is still one of the number one used applications in AECO. Like how many times you guys use Excel just to populate data of things, right? So what if an Excel spreadsheet got moved using a desktop connector type tool, whether it is that desktop connector or not, if it's called Forma connector, I don't know what we're going to name it at some point. And then that Excel spreadsheet ended up in your project data management site, but then can be just consumed downstream by Rhino, by Revit, by Navisworks, by whatever. Like now you get to the point where you could have an intern type in information into an Excel spreadsheet about door hardware, and they never have to open Revit. And then you look at your Revit model and all the door hardware stuff is there. Right? So I think there's some really, really super exciting things going on with that. Like Jim had to go, but I get super excited about this because I said early on in this conversation, I was a day one Revit user. Super excited when I first saw Revit. I'm like, oh my God, this thing is going to be revolutionary. Revit-lutionary, right? Like it was literally in my mind immediately going to change the way we did things. And it did. Where I feel we're at right now with this idea about an industry cloud and using Forma as this container and having data be freely shared without files between everything, we're at this new revolutionary phase. And I'm super excited about what that means for the industry. We've come a long ways with Revit and BIM. People have, I think you even had an episode about what does the next Revit look like or something like that, didn't you, a while back? There was an episode about what the next Revit might be. I think we're there with this idea that there's Revit still could be an authoring tool, but you guys use tons of tools to do your stuff, Autodesk and non-Autodesk. What if there was a way for it to all seamlessly come together. It sounds like a pipe dream, but that's our goal, is really for all of this stuff to be able to come together in one environment, and have you guys have it accessible to you and use it in ways you never thought of before, with AI really behind the scenes that can start to do actions for us. Like I said earlier, putting views on sheets and dimensioning plans, or there's a few examples that we've shown, I think even at AU, about, highlighting objects, doing code discovery for us, like, check fire rated walls against current code for door fire ratings, and have it highlight all the doors that are out of compliance. Like little things like that will help us a long ways of when we go to that building department and it takes weeks for them to turn it around. Wouldn't it be great if we could solve that before it got to the building department, right? And made sure that we were meeting the needs of accessibility and fire protection and seismic design and all of these things going forward.
So what does this look like moving forward for us, in the next, 12 to 24 months? What does this transition, sort of migration and adoption look like for us users and end users and varying users of these tools across the platforms?
Other than some name changes, like I said, so ACC as we know it will be Forma when we roll these things out. And again, safe harbor statement, the plan currently looking forward is to try to have all of this available and done when we have our desktop products roll out. I say spring, but then people might be watching from the Southern Hemisphere. So next March, April timeframe, right?
Yeah.
Or fall, depending on where you're at in the world. So when these things roll out, the Revit, like the 27 products of AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, Recap, all of our AECO products. When you go into a Revit and you go to, send project, I want to make a cloud model. It might say Forma rather than send to ACC or however it's named today. So we'll see some of those things. Now, go ahead and share that screen again for the dot that I have here. So this will be kind of like the first iteration of this idea of Forma connected clients. Revit obviously is the first, right? The first connected client. But I think the next one's downstream, and hopefully coming soon after that. Again, I don't have there's no concrete dates or times on some of the stuff yet, but AutoCAD and Civil 3D, so that, again, we have this seamless idea that Civil 3D, Revit, and Forma are all coming together in one single environment. Obviously, I showed that slide earlier, which talked about other connected third-party clients, Rhino, Veris, on and on and on that slide. TestFit, I mentioned Hypar and those guys, and Motif and all of these others. I'm hoping that all of those kind of things, third party, will start looking at this platform as well. So no matter what tool you choose to get the job done, you can be assured that it's going to work with your main authoring platform, and hopefully that's still Revit at some point. But again, maybe you're working with somebody that you're design architect, or maybe the design architect's working at Archicad, and the construction documentation architect is working in Revit. At some point, we'll be like, fine,
right?
That's okay. Like, as long as the data can move back and forth seamlessly, we won't care where you work.
We still won't be able to go backwards in Revit, though.
But why not?
Yes, you're right. If it's a common data environment, then in theory you can
already do it today, Jeff. So we have this idea of these data exchanges, and we actually proved this out. Myself and one of my teammates, Tom May, did this, where we took a Revit 25 project. I wrote it out. I made a data connector. Yeah, I went to Data Exchange, and then I put it in an ACC project, and he opened Revit 2024 and went load at Data Exchange, and it loaded in, and we had visibility graphics control. It looked just like a Revit model. It sectioned, it dimensioned, visibility graphics, it reacted to templates. It looked just like a Revit file, but it was now backwards or forwards compatible. You're working in Revit 24 and the lead architect's in 25 or 26 or 27. Why not at some point?
Yeah. No,
being in a fileless format, you're no longer tied to the file date system of that architect file.
Got it. Very cool, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so awesome.
Super exciting.
Where are we at time-wise? We're getting close. So we're going to go over today like we have in the past?
we can. If you got a couple more things you want to touch on, we can definitely. I don't want you to miss on some of the things you want to talk about.
Let me see here. I'm flipping through slides.
While you're flipping, there was a question from Kevin in the chat talking about the idea of no files and the data itself being packaged and organized. I think he said he's a little confused of that concept. I think maybe I can, while you're flipping, I can sort of try and explain how I understand it, and then you could help me with that. And so I think, Kevin, what we're saying here is, and I think now that I sort of mentioned that idea of civil and the proxy graphics, I think that's actually probably a good sort of analogy to what we're talking about here, in the sense that what you're seeing is a proxy of the data in whatever tool you're using, right? So you're connected to the data, and so it knows that there's a wall that is this type and looks like this and does that, and it's in a format that can be read in any tool, and then then the geometry is being shown and usable in your native tool. It doesn't mean it's drawing a Revit wall. It's creating a piece of geometry that has all those properties, information, and selectable
data,
right, driven from data. And I think if you, I keep going back to Tracer because it's similar, a similar type of tool where it takes the ODBS or whatever database from Revit, and it takes that one geometry data piece and it rebuilds it essentially in Power BI. And that's kind of, that to me is how I'm connecting the dots. It's kind of like we have this giant database that we just exported from Revit, and in there's a column that's called geometry, I think, and like in that it's just like this 4,000 character piece of text, right? And each one means nothing to anything, but then you bring in a Power BI using their tool, and it just uses that piece of geometry to recreate it, and then connect all the data to it.
That's it. At the end of the day, this is all data. Even geometry is just data. Data, like a wall is effectively ones and zeros, right? Describing the shape, the size, where does it start, where does it end, how tall is it, what's its materiality, what layering system. That's all just data. So through it.
So as I was saying that, Tom LS, when can we see a live demo?
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm not at liberty to do anything live yet today because these are not actually technically like real products yet. But if you want to see the latest example of a live demo, we did that again on the main stage at Autodesk University. So go watch the main keynote. When Andrew comes out on stage and when he walks over to Robin, it's one of the presenters, and Robin does the first live. For the first time in years, we did a live demo on main stage. For those that have been to AU in the past, we
pre-recorded everything, right?
Pre-recorded. And Andrew actually goes, Robin, we're going to do this live, right? And she went, yep, we're going to do it live. And he's like, okay, good luck. And it went really well. So if you want to see the kind of first recorded live demo, be sure to go back to Autodesk University. It's all free. All of this content, you didn't have to attend Autodesk University to go see the stuff.
Right.
Just Google it.
Yes, Autodesk I did not, and I watched it. Right. So I was not able to go this year. So and I watched it. It looks like Kevin's connecting the dots there. He said so everything would still be stored on like an S3 drive individually, and you wouldn't need to sync the file. Exactly. Right. The data is stored in the cloud, which we're talking about. This whether it's S3 or whatever, so it's a cloud drive, right? And and you're essentially syncing to the data. And so similar to every progression of cloud-based usage we're dealing with, internet speeds is probably going to be your biggest thing coming into this as well, right? It's going to be clearly this is going to require quite a bit of bandwidth as far as but if you're used to dealing with cloud work sharing and SharePoint and all these cloud devices, then I think you're familiar with the need for bandwidth.
What's funny is we call it cloud. Everything we do today is internet based. Internet is cloud.
Right. Exactly.
You go to buy a plane ticket, you're using the cloud. You go to buy something from Amazon. We run everything. Kevin mentioned S3. That's Amazon S3. That's their
data warehouse. Data clouds.
Data warehouse. We use Amazon Web Services, AWS for everything. So all of this stuff is connected. And I think early on there was a question about what if you have a consultant that doesn't want to use the cloud? That would be like, I don't know, saying that you only want to exchange drawings through a fax machine. It's kind of like old technology. We got to move on from that and get away from this idea that you can't use the cloud. Some of you are going to raise your hand and go, we do government work. we have a FedRAMP cloud now, right? So we're still working on it. Our FedRAMP cloud is still in BIM 360 days, but we're working towards a now what will be called a Forma Gov Cloud. I would assume it's with the Forma thing, but so AWS, Amazon Web Services, has their own Gov Cloud instance. So our instance of these things has to run on Amazon's government cloud, which adheres to all the safety and security protocols of the U.S. government.
Right.
And then some of you are international. I think there's maybe some Canadians on here. Maybe some people from overseas. I mentioned Australia. I just mentioned U.S. government. What about all the other authorities in the world, right? So we have to build a system that can conform to any one of these. And we are putting more and more data centers out there. We do now have a data center, AWS data center in Canada. There's a one in Europe. There's a new one in India. We have one in Australia, a new one in the Asia Pacific region somewhere. So we used to only have, when all this started, Jeff, as you mentioned, BIM 360, we had one, right? AWS Virginia.
Right.
Everything was hosted in Virginia, no matter where in the world you were working. And now I think we have 7 data centers around the world, and we're going to be quickly expanding.
Yes, and there's going to be plenty more.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions we should address here, maybe before time? We're over a little bit already, but
yeah, no, I think that's most of them. Tom just said if they don't want to work on the cloud, they have to post the model. Well, posting the model is still posting it to the cloud, so that's I think whether it doesn't, yeah. No, I think
we got Mark from the Tandem team. Thanks, Mark, for jumping on the call. I didn't see you on here earlier because somebody asked, is Tandem a part of this? Absolutely. Again, so Tandem is just another tool in the portfolio of Autodesk stuff that can now read this data and use it downstream for maintenance and operations, Internet of Things, sensor data, live data of buildings. If you guys have not looked at Tandem yet, or maybe you said, we looked at Tandem a couple years ago and it wasn't quite there. If you said maybe a couple years ago, I might agree with you. Go look at Tandem today. It is an amazing tool. Fantastic things. And most of you, if you're in AEC collections, actually have access to what we call Tandem for AEC. That's already part of your collection today that you can actually start going and building digital twins with no additional cost.
Yeah. I think that's the next step of all of it is having dealt with plenty of projects and closeout. Is owners are going to once they start catching up, instead of getting the packages that we're sending them of zip files of 30 different file types and saying here's your federated model with all the source files, have fun.
It's still the same. It's funny because what you just described is what I used to do 20 years ago. Except I would print and send 23 ring binders over to facilities, and there was some digital because we'd done some stuff being there. You just talked about it being that same thing but digital. It's basically like saying I'm printing to PDF. A PDF is just still a drawing. It's just a little print. At the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But moving to this digital transformation, having a live digital twin of the facility that has all this information embedded inside of it. So a facilities guy on his phone can go, what's the model number of that air handler so I can get the right filter? And he picks it on his phone, and there it is. And he knows exactly what he needs to go get.
Yep.
Right? Instead of going to that shelf in the facilities office and flipping through 45 binders full of information.
Exactly. We'll end on this one last, it's kind of a question or comment, but which I think kind of ties all together, which is Kevin was mentioning that, currently they're using NWCs for a coordination and IFCs, et cetera. And the whole point of what you're saying, again, especially on the construction side, but even on the architecture side, if you're trying to actually do coordination and model coordination and stuff, that doesn't, NWC almost doesn't need to exist anymore if is sort of the end product here, right? Ideally, you're working in your authoring tool, whether it's CAD, MEP, fabrication, or whatever. And there's no more exporting to X format to get it combined into model coordination, right? It would be they're just saving this file to it and working, and you're able to pull it into model coordination, which I guess that's
works or both, right? Like having it there, and I think you're nailing it. Like, so it's a Revit model, it's an IFC model because maybe some people are still using that, and it's Tekla, and it's something from DGN, and it's an Archicad model, and guess what? They just all come together. We don't care where they were authored. At the end of the day, I need to do coordination and clash.
Yep. And so I think what it reminds me of a little bit is probably where something that already exists is that SVF file or whatever it is, which is if you guys have used model coordination and you publish to docs, or you try and view it, or you open the Navis file, the NWF, whatever it is, there's this SVF or something. I forgot what the file extension is, but basically it doesn't matter what you're coming in as, right? NWC, IFC, well, IFC kinda, because model coordination only likes certain IFCs, but CAD or 3D CAD, whatever it is, when it's creating this publish to doc, it's basically converting those to this consistent file type, which I think is SVF or something like that, and that's what you're seeing all over the place. And so,
the VF was a vector file. I forgot what the S stood for.
Yeah,
some kind of vector file format.
Yeah,
right?
It caused some issues in the beginning, but I think it's getting a little better now. But yeah, I think in general it would solve it definitely the constant export import coordination or aligning and that whole piece of it and the back and forth. I see the vision. I hope we get there fast. I hope it rolls out the way they see it. So
I have not been this excited since the Revit days came out. I've been through a lot of 19 years of Autodesk when Revit came out 25 years ago now, right? So I've seen a lot of it. And again, I'm like super excited about where we're at, where we're going with this idea, this technology. It's kind of reinvigorated myself, others on the team. Mark's on the call. I saw Brianna was on the call earlier from the Autodesk side. I'm not sure who else joined, but I think we're all super excited about where this is at, where it's all going. Hopefully this has given you guys a little bit of inspiration and maybe got us past the fact that we're changing names again. Yes, we are doing that. But there's more to it than just a name. It's really about creating an entirely new way, the way that AECO is going to go about doing your work in the really near future here. And it's super exciting to see it.
Yeah, for sure. One last thing, and this may be too early to tell, but are we thinking that if like, for example, model coordinate's a great example, where, one of the biggest issues that I'm sure plenty of people who've dealt with it, whether you're on the design or the construction side, is, you start to hit walls with very large and complex models, right? And especially if you have multiple formats, 3D CAD, NWC, Revit, all these things coming in, to the point where it's not even workable. And that's where you all of a sudden now you dump it back into Navis or something because it's the only performance-wise. I'm assuming, and again, maybe it's too early to tell this, is that if now Model Coordinate is reading this data exchange files, then is it going to be lighter to the sense that now it can actually open these files that maybe it couldn't even open before because of the heaviness of geometry and complexity of the models?
I'm right there with you. I don't have any
all right. we will see.
I'm
we will
pretty
see.
sure that you're on the right track.
It sounds like it, right? It sounds like it.
Make a data exchange today, because you can already make a data exchange, and you go to your project as it is ACC still today and look at that data exchange. It is 0 kilobytes in ACC.
Right, and I can tell you, I've done the data exchange with the connectors in Power BI, and even that viewer, and it's impressive the complexity of the models you can open in Power BI using the data exchange. And so that's kind of why I'm thinking that this is the direction that it's all going. So, because I know that's been a struggle. It has been large, you mentioned data centers, right? Large, complex, huge buildings, right? And the ACC tools, not being able to necessarily handle them without compressing them down or chunking them down into smaller pieces because of the heaviness of the models, because of where they're coming from. Okay. Awesome, man. Well,
it's insane. Literally, I mean, here's the thing. You guys are producing way more data in your models than I think that the founders of Revit ever thought imaginable in a Revit project. Like, Lee and Erwin never thought we would be doing what we're doing today with Revit and obviously all of these other tools. And even to go to that degree, and I know we're going to wrap up here, but the Revit team, for those that are not in the My Feedback, go to feedback.autodesk.com. It's free. Go sign up for what's called Revit Preview. Jeffrey, I think you're in it, and you can be involved in the continuous beta program of Revit and see the new tools and features that are coming out. And they're working on some things right now to make just data, like Revit itself, perform, I don't know how many degrees faster than it can today, but I can't spill too much because it is under beta. But go to My Feedback or go to feedback.autodesk.com and get involved, and you'll see what the Revit team's working on to do some things to actually really, really speed up RVT files as we know them today, because it's going to take us a little time to transition from this idea of RVT into data exchange fileless format. This is not going to happen overnight, right? So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for coming on. And when
Absolutely.
when Revit 2027 comes out, and you're gonna be the first one to come on to do the live demo here of connecting the data exchange and showing everyone how it works. No prep ahead of time; it's just live model, right?
Yeah, we'll see all the new stuff. We'll see all the new names.
Exactly.
Here's the other thing. Just to leave your audience here, and then all users that watch this in the future, I felt like, and I hope my Autodesk colleagues feel the same, that it's important for us to get all these name changes in front of you now. Yes, they're not effectively going to go into product until maybe early next year, all things considered. But I think it's important we start talking about it now, so you guys know that it's coming. You get an idea of where if you're just blindsided by, what do you mean ACC's Forma now? I think it's really important. So thank you for giving me the ability to speak to your group tonight about that and what these name changes are, and hopefully it gives you guys a little bit of runway to start getting prepared for these things coming forward.
Of course, and thanks for coming on. I think I would imagine that as the rollout finally happens and we start getting more of these exchanges and ability and sort of that kind of stuff and workflows and whatnot, then I think the next show would probably be you coming on and walking through. Let's talk about the process similar to what we did with ACC, right? I think that'll be maybe a year from now, maybe a year and a half. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But it's super good things to come. So
plan on me next. We'll put a tentative March, April time frame. Throw that on the calendar. Then I'll come back on.
You got it. The spring 26 season. You're on. I got it.
Spring or fall, depending on which hemisphere.
Right. Well, thanks again, Scott. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, everybody who joined us here live in the chat. Everyone hung around for quite some time, which is awesome. I'm excited for this. I'm glad we got a chance to get in front of it. Like you said, Scott, that's always good because there's going to be a lot of re-education and learning new names. But I think I see the vision and the direction, and I'm excited for it. So thanks again, man. Thank you guys, everyone, for joining. We'll see you on the next episode. Again, head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. You can reach out to Scott on Twitter is probably the best bet if you guys want to heckle him, right? That's at Scott D. Davis on Twitter. And thanks again, Scott. I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. I love doing this and look forward to the next episode with you.
You got it, man. All right. We'll talk soon.
Good night,
Bye, everyone.